What is up, everybody? Hello. Welcome to Lee Play. I am here to play, well, my name is Lee, first of all, and I'm here to play Mother 2, also known as EarthBound. This is CoolGuyBrendyn's quote-unquote perfect edition of the game. As you can see there, it says Mother 2, Giga Strikes Back. It's not a perfect version of the game, but it is the most accurate version that Western fans currently have to the original Japanese version. So that's why I am playing this one. I gave it a go back on Mother 2's actual 30th anniversary, and the patch had some issues right at the beginning that I was not happy about. I messaged him, CoolGuyBrendyn, on Reddit, explaining these things to him. He fixed some of them, not all of them, unfortunately. He was resistant to some of them. I don't really understand exactly why, but it's fine. At least he fixed some of the things that were wrong with it. So this is the most updated current version of the patch. So shout out to him for making this. Thank you also for fixing some of those issues in the beginning of the game. And I hope you will continue to make the corrections that I suggested as well. Also, big shout out and thank you to my buddy Alex, good friend Alex, for giving me the ability to play this version of the game on my actual SNES hardware. I would not be able to do this without him, without that. So big thank you to you. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to be playing through the entire Mother trilogy and doing a deep dive narrative analysis as I go through the games. I already played through the first game, Mother. I used Clyde Mandelin's GBA version, his translation, which is also currently the most accurate to the Japanese version that Western fans have. And so if you have not watched that, go and watch that first. What's up, Subs World? Welcome, dude. Good to have you. Oh, thank you to whoever the first like on the stream was as well. So if you are unfamiliar with these games, or even if you are, even if you think you know Mother like the back of your hand and you know all the ins and outs, I trust me. I promise you don't. Go back and watch my playthrough of the original game first before you jump into this, because it lays all the groundwork for this game. You will not be able to fully comprehend and appreciate and understand this game's narrative without having experienced that first playthrough and that first deep dive analysis beforehand. So, thank you for the second like on the stream as well. So, I have gotten a RetroTink 5X Pro, which is why the game looks so wonderful. Subs World, sorry couldn't be there for one of the other streams. Dude, you don't have to apologize. I appreciate that you're here for any streams. Thank you so much for being here, man. Thank you also for the third like on the stream. Keep them rolling in. If anyone's watching the video of this later, make sure you like it as well. If anyone new is watching, subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell. Set it for all notifications, not just personalized, otherwise YouTube will drop the ball a lot of the time. But yeah, so we are doing a full series, full trilogy playthrough, deep dive analysis, and basically the problem with these games that people have is that they seem very cute and simple and just kind of funny on the surface, so people vastly underestimate them and misunderstand them on a fundamental, deep level. And Shigesato Itoi is a true genius and made these wonderful games. They're unlike anything else that's out there. These games have a more complex and tightly woven and heavily layered narrative than even most modern games. Like 99% of people have no idea all the hidden stuff that's going on beneath the surface of these games. And that's what I'm here to change. I'm here to change the conversation about these games in the West and prove once and for all by showing you the absolutely staggering mountain of evidence and proof that shows exactly what is going on in these narratives, dismantling any notions of fan theory and, that's just a fan theory, or, whatever. Like, any and all questions will be answered. I promise you that. And I'm going to prove to you I'm telling you once and for all that which quote unquote fan theories are actually not theory at all and are actually hard fact, and also prove which fan theories are wrong as well. What's the goal of this game? Without spoilies, the most, hey, thank you for all the hearts, y'all. The most simplistic way I could sum it up is you are a band of children, 3 psychics and a genius who are trying to prevent the world from falling into the hands of destruction. Well, falling into destruction at the hands of a great alien conqueror. The first game, Mother, set up everything in this story that's going to happen. So I highly recommend watching my first playthrough and deep dive analysis of the first game before watching this. But feel free to watch this stream. This stream won't... I don't know. Whatever you want to do, but I'm just saying, I highly recommend watching the first one before you jump into this. So anyway, what we need to start with is, because this game picks up pretty much right from where the first game leaves off, we need to review what happened at the end of the first game. So I'm going to review the big important stuff that happened at the end of that game, at the end of the last stream that I did. I'm going to go ahead and press something here so we can get on some different music. So the subtitle of this game is Geek's Counterattack. So what we're going to do here is pull this up. Okay, so this is all the stuff that happened in the last stream, the last Mother stream. So we were up on Holy Lily Mountain, and we ran into this guy here, a Megaborg. This is, as you can see, a robot that is modeled after like feudal Japan samurai. And the reason for that, as we discussed in the first playthrough, was because these aliens have been coming to Earth for a long, long, long time. At least hundreds and hundreds of years, if not longer. So this is not the first time they've invaded or been here. And so this is a remnant from past invasion attempts when they were invading other parts of the world at different times in history. And if you watched the first game, you would know that the armor enemy, which looks like a medieval suit of armor, is an alien robot made to look like a medieval suit of armor. And this here, because they're invading, basically a country, America, that was descended from Europe, just Europeans. And so they tend to create robots for their invasions that look like things involving the culture of the place they're invading. This here, we were going further up the mountain, and we ran into this guy. Now, at the end of the first playthrough, I actually misinterpreted something, and I have to correct that right now. I had claimed that the R-7030 series are all the same robot, because you run into R-7037 in the desert, and then you run into R-7038 here on Mount Holy Lowly. That is, and I claimed that it was the same robot returned and repaired and upgraded. I was incorrect. These are two separate robots. One is guarding the memorial to Maria's spirit in the desert, and this one is guarding the memorial to Maria's physical body, her grave. As you get closer to the top of the mountain, this guy attacks you. So Gigas, or Geeg, depending on your translation, set up two different incredibly dangerous, huge, these guys are enormous. These guys are like, what did it say, like 3 meters tall, weigh like a few tons or something. They're enormous. They're incredibly dangerous. You cannot defeat them without the use of a tank or some other mechanical help. So we defeated the first one, R-7037, in the desert because we were borrowing a tank from this guy in the desert who like was being kind enough to let us take a ride in the tank. And we ran into the other robot. And if you run into that robot without the tank, you're dead. There's no way to possibly beat it. But we ran into him with the tank. Everything it threw at us reflected off of its armor, and we destroyed it. So this guy shows up, and we don't have a tank. And one of the reasons we can tell that this is a separate robot is because this is the check info right here. Is there actually any way to defeat this thing? If they were the same robot, it would mention that they were, which we'll see shortly. So this is actually not the same robot as R-7037. It's another one. There's two Memorial Guardian robots, one for the desert and one for the mountain. So it shows up, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, after it's defeated us, it tears a hole through space and escapes. Why? Because Lloyd shows up with the tank. And how does he return with the tank? Because when we destroyed the first robot, it exploded and destroyed our tank along with it. But in Valentine, the town of Valentine, or the city of Valentine, I should say, we ran into the guy who lent us his tank. And he was crying about it. And he said, "You better pay me the money to have it fixed. You cannot move forward without doing this. You have to pay him the money to fix his tank before you can move on." So that's how the tank is returned, because we paid him to fix it, he fixed it, and he let Lloyd borrow it again. So Lloyd caught up with us on the mountain. Now, why would this robot run away? Well, what that means is that because we destroyed R-7037 with the tank, and we know that Gigas planted these robots here to protect his memorials to Maria, that means that he became aware that one of his memorial robots was destroyed by a tank. And so he, he basically updated or, told this robot, if you see a tank coming, get out of there. Your brother robot was destroyed by a tank. If you see a tank coming, do not try to fight it. So this thing saw Lloyd coming in the tank and got the fuck out of there, because it knew that its fellow Memorial Guardian robot was destroyed by that tank. So it sees Lloyd coming, it gets the fuck out of there, tears a hole through space, and escapes. And we are all black and burned because the robot tearing a hole through space, caught us in... Well, actually, no, I forgot. He fucks us up first. That's right. Then he escapes. So that's why we're all messed up, because he basically almost killed us. We were all unconscious. That's why we're all rickety-wrecked. So after that, Lloyd takes us into the tank back to the base of the mountain, where Teddy is critically injured and has to stay in bed. So Lloyd rejoins us, and we continue our trek back up Mount Holy Lily. Now, as we got closer to the peak, we found this big-ass lake up near the top of the mountain. Isn't that strange? So we take the little motorboat here, and we find ourselves a whirlpool. We enter the whirlpool, and it pulls us in, takes us down to the depths through this hatch on the bottom of the lake. And we end up here in this place that looks exactly like the same architecture of the Duncan factories, the Sweet Little Factory and Duncan's factory around the town of Thanksgiving. And this lets us know that, first of all, just note that the architecture is the same. You got the steel panels all over the walls, you got the piping, and you have these like red sensors or cameras or something here. But what this place has that the other places lack are these big windows that let us see out into the water, into the lake. You can see the fish and stuff. Well, then we go further into this place. This is purported to be George's lab. George is Ninten's great-grandfather. For that backstory, go back and watch that playthrough. But we find this robot, The instant it sensed Ninten, the robot sprang to life. So this thing has been programmed to respond specifically to Ninten's presence. And this thing says, does it not say its name? I don't know, but its name is Eve. It says, I have been waiting for you. My father was George. So that's a little strange, right? The robot doesn't say its creator was George. It says its father was George. But George wasn't known for robotics. So isn't that strange? How would George be her father if George wasn't an expert in robotics? Well, because earlier in the game, to the north of the city of Valentine, we took a little trip on a rocket out to this little remote island off the coast that has this little shack on it. What do we find there but another scientist who had escaped from the Duncan Corporation? All that backstory, if you're unfamiliar, go back and watch the first playthrough. But there's a bunch of scientists who have escaped from the evil Duncan Corporation and are in hiding because they know too much and their lives are in danger. So this guy was living here, and he has these two assistants with him, Assistant A and B. You give one of them some strawberry tofu, and he says, let me give you some, this is reversed. But he says, as a token of my gratitude, I'll share some information I heard, which is implied to be heard from the guy he's assisting, that scientist. There's an amazing robot at the bottom of a lake on Holy Lowly Mountain. I bet it still works, too. So there's no possible way for virtually anyone but George to know about Eve and about this robot, because Mount Holy Lowly is almost impossible to climb. It's super dangerous, and it's full, absolutely full, of incredibly strong aliens and robots and, the strongest forces that the aliens have. And yet, this guy knows about it. So what does that mean? That means that this gentleman here helped George to either make this robot or reprogram it. Depends on if this robot was just already found in this place or if it was built. But that's how George could be Eve's quote-unquote father, because he's not a robotics expert, but he worked with this guy here. This guy helped him make it. So Eve says, George was taken to the ends of the universe, and then he returned here. My duty is to protect you. So this place is not a laboratory. It's a crashed spaceship that George stole from the aliens. And that's why there's this big crater. That's why it's at the bottom of the lake, because George escaped from the aliens like 80 years ago. And so in that time, this crater that the crashed ship made has filled up with rainwater and become a lake. So this is not a lab. So what that means is, since this is an alien spaceship and it has the exact same architecture as the two Duncan factories, that means that, that's further evidence of what we were talking about in that previous game, that Duncan has been working with the aliens and letting the aliens sort of run things in his factory for the last few years. So Eve's duty is to protect Ninten. That's why she awakens when she senses Ninten's presence. So George set this up. George knew that his ancestor would get this far at some point, and set up a protective measure to help Ninten overcome the forces of the aliens, because at the top of this mountain, this is where the aliens station themselves. So this is where the most dangerous of the alien forces are going to be. George set up Eve as a protective measure against that to help his ancestor combat the aliens. So, Eve joins us. We go outside. We leave the lab, and this thing shows up and attacks us. R-7038XX. So this is the same robot as R-7038, returned and upgraded. And I forgot to check the enemy in the game, so I don't have a screenshot of the check info, but it's on here on one of the EarthBound wikis. The description says new and unfortunately improved. So that's how we know that this is an updated version of the same robot as R-7038, and also how we know that R-7038 is not an updated, rebuilt, or repaired version of R-7037, because it would say that. It would say that it was, repaired or new and improved, whatever. So 7037 and 7038 are separate robots, but 7038XX is a new and improved version of R-7038. So, and again, it has that XX symbol on its chest, and also in its serial number that we've been seeing all throughout the game. Specifically, we would see it on the God's Tails, those rocks that take us to Magicant. And I forgot to mention it in the playthrough, but we also see it throughout Magicant a lot, and we also find it on Maria's grave, which we'll get to here in a minute. But Eve helps protect us against this immensely powerful robot. They end up taking each other out in the fight. Eve was destroyed and ceased functioning. Music began to emanate from Eve's chest area. So George, because he knew that his ancestor would have to collect the shattered pieces of Maria's melody and return them to her in order to wake her up and save her soul from her Magicant prison, he was able to get one of the melody shards to manifest and put it in and program it into Eve for his ancestor to obtain. We also ran into one of the gynoids, one of the 3 types of gynoids we find. This one's name is Susie. They all look like women, and they all have Western female names. So this is another, as we talked about in that game, one of the examples of Gigas's deep issues and complicated feelings about Maria, who raised him from infancy, and who he accidentally killed in a big infant retaliation to her singing to him, because her expression of pure, simple human love of her singing to him causes him and his race great anguish and pain. And so that was the whole thing, that she was singing to him one time because she was taking care of him. He lashed out with some incomprehensible psychic attack, obliterated her, shattered the melody into pieces, and it separated her body from her spirit, obviously, because it killed her. And ever since then, he's been setting all this up as a way to show honor and respect to her in the only way that he knows how, because Geeg and his race are very mechanically minded. They don't understand, they're very divorced from nature and from nurturing concepts and love and stuff. And so Gigas is trying to show honor and appreciation to Maria in apology for his accidental killing of her as an infant, because she essentially taught him what love was, because his race is unfamiliar with that. But he has these weird conflicted feelings about it, because they don't understand nurturing and love and stuff, but yet she got through to him somehow through her pure expressions of love and everything. She got through to him and left an impact. And so the gynoids are an example of him trying to show honor and respect to Maria's memory by building robots that basically just have breasts and have female names, because that's as best as he can sort of understand femininity. Basically boils it down to a shape and a name. We also were attacked on Mount Holy Lowly near the top by the Star Miner. Now, I'd mentioned before in the other streams that the bomber, which is a palette swap of this guy, which we found in the Duncan factory, it was a Duncan-made robot. It's just emblematic of Duncan and his whole personality, you know, he would always like sort of paint himself as being a very good, like, oh, sweet, you know, innocent person, but he was doing a lot of really shitty things behind the scenes. And so this Duncan robot design reflects that. It's very cute. You know, it's programmed to like trip and fall occasionally. Oh, it's so adorable, but it's super dangerous. And this here, because the Duncan Corporation was working with the aliens have taken this design and upgraded it into the Star Miner, and it's capable of much more dangerous attacks and psi and stuff. But what's interesting about this guy, the bomber and the Star Miner, which I forgot, I didn't forget to mention, I didn't put it together until recently, that their design is like, it's a callback to Duncan's like history as a company, because the Sweet Little Factory, if y'all remember, was considered the like America's like foremost manufacturer of missiles for the U.S. government. So, because Duncan had taken a dirty deal with the government in exchange for some cheap land to be able to build this factory, he would produce weapons and missiles for them and stuff. That's why this robot looks like a bomb or a missile, because it's emblematic of the shit that Duncan was up to. You know, like it was primarily thought of as a weapons manufacturer for the U.S. government. Hence, it looks like a bomb. I thought that was pretty cool. So then we finally get to this headstone. Everybody in the Western fan base thinks this is George's grave. It's not. It's Maria's, emblematic of, or as symbolized by the double X mark. What is the double X mark? The female chromosome. That's how we know this is Maria's, because we find the XX marks everywhere involving Maria. We find them on the God's Tales, which lead to Magicant, where Maria is imprisoned. We find them on this headstone. We find them on R-7038 when it comes back new and improved, because it's trying to protect this memorial from being defaced or messed with at all, because it's so personal to Gigas. But look at this. I didn't even notice this while playing through the game, and I just noticed it recently. You find the XX mark all throughout Magicant too, all around Maria. These are the pillars leading up to Maria's, or Queen Mary's castle. Queen Mary is Maria's spirit, basically forgotten who she is, trapped in the world of Magicant. She can't rest in peace, and that's the whole point of this, is to like the whole point of the game is to free her spirit from Magicant, let her rest in peace, and also put a stop to the alien invasion. And so this is the realm of Magicant. It's a realm of dreams, specifically Maria's dream. Magicant is a realm created from a mix of a precious melody, like a song that's precious to the person. It's created from childhood dreams, like wishes, fantasies, and memories of the person, and it uses the God's Tale material as the catalyst to create Magicant. So, yeah, these are the pillars leading up to Queen Mary's castle, and they have the XX mark on them. And then these are the top pillars, like at the gate leading into her castle. They have the XX mark. And then here, this guy says, if you're looking for Queen Mary's fountain, then just go west from the castle. And what does Queen Mary's fountain have on it? The XX symbol. So, like, this whole thing, this XX symbol is Gigas' symbol for Maria. And look at here, it's even on the top spire on the top of Queen Mary's castle, the XX mark. So that is how we know definitively that the XX mark represents Maria. That is Gigas' symbol for her memorial, to like honor her and remember her by. Because, why? Because, again, Gigas and his race don't really understand like nature, human nurturing, motherhood, like femininity, none of this stuff. So like this is him trying to make sense of all that, and he basically boils Maria's like memory and character and everything down to just the base mechanical the mechanics of femininity, the XX chromosome, and with the gynoids, you know, feminine names and breasts, basically, like just boiling femininity and womanhood down to these base elements when it's obviously so much more than that. But that's what's up. So that's how we know that that's Maria's headstone and not George's. But right above the headstone, the cave leading to the mothership is blocked with this big boulder. And then we check out the headstone, and something begins to materialize. This black diamond here. And it begins to speak to us. This is George's spirit speaking to us through this black diamond. So we approach Maria's headstone. That's why everybody thinks this is George's headstone, just because George's spirit appears here and speaks to us. But I just proved that's not the case. It's the XX symbol is Gigas' symbol for memorializing Maria. But George speaks to us once we get here through this black crystal. And by the way, if it was George's grave, he would just speak to us through the grave. He wouldn't need to summon or set up the summoning of this black diamond to speak to us through, you know? So just because George is speaking to us through the summoning of this black diamond at Maria's headstone does not mean it's George's headstone. But George says, "Welcome, Nintin. I always had faith that you would make it this far. Long ago, your great-grandmother Maria filled her 8 melodies with all the love she could and scattered them around as gifts for you, even though she had never seen you before." And then that gives us the last piece of the melody that we needed. So what this means here is, you know, obviously from the beginning of the game, we knew that, well, it was setting everything up to show us that George, because he tried saving Maria's soul from her magic camp prison as much as he could, he wasn't able to do it in his lifetime, so he set everything up for his ancestor to be able to do it and finish the work that he started and couldn't finish. So George, this is him talking to us, you know, I always had faith that you would make it this far. That's like, he knew we would get to this point at some point. That's why this black diamond is set up here, to be summoned and to be able to speak to us through it. And the fact that he says your great-grandmother long ago filled her 8 melodies with all the love she could and scattered them around as gifts for you, even though she'd never seen you before. Like, remember that when Gigas had that natural self-defense outburst as an infant and killed her with that incomprehensible psychic attack when she sang to him, it not only killed her, it shattered her melody on like a higher psychic plane. And Maria was able to like fill those memory shards with love and scatter them throughout nature for us to find. And even though she'd never seen you before. So both Maria's spirit, I would say, and George himself both knew that an ancestor of theirs would come along to like finish this work and save her and save the world and everything from Gigas's invasion. But they just didn't know who it would be, you know. They didn't know it would be, you know, someone named Nintin. They didn't know it was going to be a great-grandson. But maybe Maria like may have had some inkling because it was after she was dead and her spirit sensed it, but George wouldn't have known. You know, he set all this up while he was still alive, and then he died. Well, actually, no. He set all this up while he was still alive. Then he like went into Magicant and just sort of stayed there in Great Depression until we freed his soul. More of that backstory is in the first playthrough. Go back and watch it. But after he's done speaking to us and we get this last melody piece from him, the black diamond shatters or dematerializes and goes away. But it doesn't get destroyed because you can continue to check the grave and it'll continue to come back and say the same thing again, but it just dematerializes. So why is it a black diamond? Because, according to Google, black diamonds are said to have many spiritual meanings, including connection to the spiritual world. Black diamonds are believed to create a link between the physical and spiritual worlds and can be used to communicate with the spirit realm. Some believe that black diamonds can help people cultivate their potential and access their innate power, authority, and wisdom. So that's why it's a black diamond. because it creates a link between the physical and spiritual worlds and can be used to communicate with the spirit realm. That's how George, after death, is speaking to us through it. And then we go back into Magicant through the use of the agate fish hook, not the onyx hook as it was mistranslated. And we sing the 8 melodies for Queen Mary, and she remembers who she is. And she says, "Oh, Gigas, I loved him as if he were my own child too." Because if you remember from the first playthrough, George and Maria had a family of their own. They had children before they were abducted by the aliens, and then all this shit went wrong. So, she's extremely maternal, extremely nurturing and loving, and being taken away from her own family for, the 2 years they were abducted, she was allowed to start helping to raise Gigas. That's how all this came to pass and how it all happened. And yeah, she transferred, she still had all these maternal instincts and couldn't, raise her own children because she'd been taken from them. So she transferred those feelings onto Gigas and began to love him as if he too were her own child. He would always wag his tail as a baby. I would sing him a lullaby, but then, boom, he experienced great anguish from it, lashed out in self-defense, obliterated her on a psychic level, and all this shit happened. And him wagging his tail as a baby is why he set up the God's Tales as a memorial to her spirit. It's sort of his way of honoring and apologizing to her, because he would and also a way of calling to the memory, preserving the memory of the good times that they had together when he would wag his tail as a baby. And God's tail, I'll remind you, is a mineral. It's a type of rock that's only found somewhere out in space. It's not available on Earth, but the aliens have access to as much of it as they want. So God's tail is a type of mineral, sort of like limestone or ruby. It's a type of precious stone. And he chose God's tail as to be her spiritual memorial, not only to be able to set up a Magicant for her and preserve her spirit, which, he naively thought was honoring her, not knowing that it wouldn't let her spirit rest, but also as a way of calling back to the fact that he would wag his tail when they were together, when she would care for him as a baby. God's tail, wagging his tail. So it's like an expression of his pain of the loss of her and for that mistake he made, when he had no control over his actions as an infant. And she says, "Oh, George, this is your wife, Maria. I know you've been waiting. I'm on my way to join you in heaven now." So once she remembers who she is, her spirit can rest. She dissolves. Once Queen Mary finished speaking to Ninten, she disappeared into the wind. And then the land of Magicant itself vanished without a trace. So both she and Magicant dissolve once she remembers who she is and her spirit is finally free. Magicant had actually been an illusion born of Mary's consciousness. And then once we come back from Magicant after that boulder blocking the entrance to Gigas' ship is mysteriously cleared. How is that, you might wonder? Well, at this point, we, quote unquote, don't know. I know, but I can't reveal that yet because it's going to tie into things in this game. And the next game, actually, it's going to tie into the whole trilogy. But let's just say there are other forces at work here. And then we find this little cave here where the people that the aliens have been abducting have been placed in these preservation pods. The mothership brought us to the top of the mountain. So that's what they're doing. Besides trying to wipe out humanity, they're also taking some of them for experimentation or probing or what have you. If you all remember the pseudo-zombie from the first game, that was an example of somebody who had been abducted, sort of been brain scrambled, turned into not a literal undead zombie, but like a brain dead sort of zombie, a zombie on like the mind level, and set back loose on Earth to be able to cause trouble. So this here is just one little bit of the shot of Gigas' mothership. It's a huge ship. It like scrolls up, but this is a portion of it. That thing in the center there is Gigas in that little orb connected to the ship through these cables. And this is what it looks like up close. That's Gigas in this like sort of artificial womb-like structure connected to the ship through these, these or sort of biotechnological, cable systems. It looks very womb-esque. And so we see here he attacks, but we can't grasp the form of it. His psychic attacks are beyond human comprehension. He's that powerful. And while we're here, when we check him, we hear Queen Mary's voice speaking to us. She says, "You can't beat Gigas with brute strength. I doubt any weapon can defeat him." So in that, even though his physical form is very weak, he's protected, he's completely invulnerable inside this artificial womb structure. That's why he's in there. It's representative and symbolic of his complete disconnection from nature, and also representative and symbolic of his strange, broken understanding of nurturing and motherhood and everything, like his sort of mechanized idea of these concepts. So he's in this like mechanical womb-like structure to protect himself. It's so emblematic of his like broken understanding of nature and motherhood and nurturing and protection and safety. But yeah, like literally, you can fight him and fight him and fight him and fight him and just do a million damage, and he'll never be defeated. You can't beat him through any kind of force, whether it's physical or psychic. He just eats it all up. He speaks to us. He says, "Nintin, I owe a great deal to your family line. Maria, George's wife, raised me when I was very young, while George himself stole vital information from our planet and tried to turn against us. And now their descendant is bent on hindering our plan again. Nintin, I am referring to you. May you be destroyed with the rest of the of the disgusting Earth people." So, he's specified that he's talking directly to us, and he's confirming all the stuff I've been talking about already. And he says, he owes a great deal to our family line because Maria raised him. And meanwhile, George spent the time in captivity with the aliens, stealing information, basically spying on them, trying to figure out how to escape and how to defeat them. And he escapes with a ship and two of the gods' tails. And that's all explained in the previous playthrough. And he finds Earth people disgusting, and this here confirms that this is his goal, is to destroy life on Earth. That's what his race is trying to accomplish here. And all these lines of dialogue from him are coming between rounds of battle. So essentially, you fight, he says something. You fight, he says something. So you try and fight him. Says, "You are too weak to do anything. You are mere insects to me." So he compares us to insects, and this is after he stated, he's specifically talking to us, to Nintin. And then he says, "Nintin, I'm willing to let you and only you live. Board the mothership with me." So despite the fact that Nintin has been a gigantic thorn in his side and has been essentially the sole or the main force of resistance against his plans and against his forces, because of how much he honors and cares for Maria and her memory, he's still willing to let her great-grandson live. And not only just live, but come join him on the mothership. That is supremely emblematic of how much Maria's memory means to him. He's willing to let Nintin live and join them on the mothership, despite all that he's done against them, just because he wants to honor Maria and sort of make up for the fact that he lashed out and killed her as a baby. but you can't do anything about it. You have to continue attacking. And he says, fine, then you can perish here with your friends and all the other hideous Earth people. So again, he calls us hideous. He thinks Earth people are disgusting, ugly, you name it, and he wants to wipe out life on Earth. But then after that, this new option shows up on the battle menu. You can start singing to him. And when you sing, it begins to sing Maria's melody to him that she sang to him as an infant. And it causes him extreme anguish. He says, you Earth insects. This is the second time he refers to us as insects. Shut up, stop singing. And like, you keep singing, he keeps like freaking out more and more and begging us to stop. And finally, he can't take it anymore and he's utterly defeated. How could I be defeated by this song? Someday I will return and make you something. Make you pay? Make you what exactly? Maybe we'll find out. But so note that when someone in the EarthBound or the Mother series talks in all capitals, it's meant to be sort of a sort of robotic way of speaking. So this here is Gigas sort of reverting back from his like very well-spoken and very like just intelligent way of speaking normally. He's reverting to this very sort of mechanical base form of speaking. Like, how could I be defeated by this song? Someday I will return and make you something. So he reverts back to this like very mechanical state of mind again. He sort of loses his composure. So this here is evidence that just because someone talks in a way that's mechanical sounding or robotic sounding doesn't mean they are a literal robot or that they're literally mechanical. It's symbolic of their mentality, of their psychology. It doesn't mean they're literally robotic, and that's going to be important as we go forward. And he says, Ninten, we will meet again. So he makes two promises there. Someday I will return and make you something. And he says, Ninten, we will meet again. So that's very important. These are not empty threats. These are promises. And then after the credits roll and everything, the very last shot of the whole game is Ninten's dad calling, saying, I hate to wake you, but it might be just a little too soon to rest easy. So that too is hinting that shit is not over for Ninten. Gigas has just promised to come back and make him something, and that they'll meet again. And then his dad is calling him a little bit later, saying it might be just a little too soon to rest easy. So this is all hinting toward things to come. And just for clarification, this is at the beginning of the game. That game took place in 1988. And now we begin the second game, Mother 2. So that's how the first game wrapped up. Holy shit, thank you for the 9 likes, everybody. What's up? Let me catch up on the chat real quick here. Hey. Oh man, I missed a lot of chat. What's up, everybody? Hello, welcome. Hey, we're up to 10 likes. Thank you, guys. Let me catch up on all the chat, because I appreciate you guys being here and hanging out and talking and stuff, even though I was not reading chat. So let me make up for that now. You'll stay on stream for a few more minutes and go to sleep. No worries, Subs. A tank in the desert? Yes, sir. Mook, what's up? Welcome. Sub says, I'll go for now, but I'll be in tune for the next stream if you can. Hell yeah, man. Mook. Gwarg! Classic Mook. Why'd I have to explain it all again? Because I'm just explaining the end of the previous game for anyone who has not played it. And it's important to review that to set up this game properly. Vaughn, what's up, dude? You don't know what's going on? I'm just recapping. I'm not analyzing Mother 1. I'm just recapping the ending. How does that rock link to all 3 games? You will see. You will see. That pod reminds you of the Navigator's Chamber from Dune. I don't remember what the Navigator's Chamber looks like. Vaughn, let's say there are other forces at work. Maybe their existence hasn't been revealed yet and will only make their appearance in other games? You don't know. Vegeta, you did not miss the stream. Why are you sad? Yeah. Top of the mothership looks like Eve's head. A little bit. I could see that. Adiel, caught me lacking? What's up, man? How'd you catch me lacking? Lee, may you have permission to restream tonight's stream to your Chinese friend? She recently got interested in Mother because of the art, but she can't access YouTube as it's blocked. I guess? I don't know how that works, but sure. Sup, Adiel. Vegeta, if you ain't uploading it on your channel, you could pretty much restream it with nobody finding out. No way, this guy finally... I just want to share my screen is all... Oh yeah, on WeChat. Yeah, that's a nice way to do it. Just do it privately to your friend. Vegeta, how's Goku doing? Now that you asked permission, you gotta wait for him to answer. Never got the ending. You wish you knew what happened between 1 and 2. You will see, my friend. You will learn. I'm gonna blow y'all's minds, man. I'm very excited. This stream is in your recommendations. Linkovich Chomovsky, hello, welcome. You left a like, thank you so much. You'll need to catch up on my other Mother streams. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, all right, everybody. So we're beginning Mother 2. I'm very excited. This is my favorite game of all time, specifically EarthBound. And the Mother trilogy is my favorite series of all time. And like I said, this trilogy of games is extremely unappreciated and underappreciated and misunderstood by the fan base, and I'm going to change that. So a couple important things to set up this before we get started. This is from Encyclopedia Mother, this was the companion book to the first game. This here section was written by Shigesato Itoi. This is the foreword at the beginning of the book. So it's important to understand Itoi's state of mind and like the way he thinks in order to understand all the nuances of the series and the narrative. So he says, I consider myself someone with less yearning for the good old days than others have. I'll even let things like records and documents of work I was involved with be thrown away one after another, figuring I won't care if it's gone forever. Which is why I get super troubled when someone asks me if they can borrow one of my works. I hear a lot of, you mean even the writer doesn't have it at his place? Well, no, I don't. I don't think I'll need it that much. Not that I'm grandstanding or anything, but I believe the work I'm doing now and the work I'll be doing from here on out are my best. And yet, with Mother, no matter what I do, I can't break away from its world of memories. All these years, I've continually found myself thinking, man, wasn't that great? When you take into account my personal manner of grandstanding, I'm embarrassed to admit that, but I can't help myself. It is the truth, after all. This book is an important volume of that Mother world. So, Itoi is the type of man who dips his toes into a lot of different interests, tries a lot of different things. You know, he's just a jack of all trades. If he's interested in it, he tries it out. He does it all. And nothing he's ever really done creatively has stuck with him except for this trilogy. So that should clue you in as to how much this series means to him and how much is going on beneath its surface. This is not just some cute little series of games, you know, with a nice little story and, you know, funny sense of humor and cute graphics. This is his magnum opus. Okay? You have to understand how much this series means to him and how highly he thinks of it, how much he loves it, how much pride he has in it. That's how great he considers it. That's how much passion and thought was put into it. That's what you got to realize in order to understand how deep and complex this series narrative really is understanding how highly regarded it is in Itoi's mind compared to anything else he's ever worked on. So you got to keep that in mind if you want to understand how this series narrative is as layered as it is. And this is some stuff from later in the book, also written by Itoi. So this here is very important to understand how he tells his stories. So he's here talking about the absence of Ninten's father. In the first game, Ninten's father is never around. You can only talk to him on the phone. He says, Itoi says, I hear all kinds of theories about the father's absence. But if I went and told them the reason for it, kids would end up getting the full picture. Yet most kids are being deceived by their mother and father. Quote, he's busy with work, quote, unquote. You know, all that kind of stuff. Your mother is keeping up a certain system and ideology when she says that. If your father is the type to come home after drinking, odds are you know how this works. The father on the other end of that phone line is just about every father. I imagine those who understand that aren't going to ask why he's absent. So this is Itoi saying, without saying it, that the father is not around because the parents are split. Ninten's father had been gone for 7 years when Mother takes place. He left when he was 5 years old, when Ninten's twin sisters, Mimi and Minnie, were born, and he never came back. And his mother claims that, he's on business or whatever, but clearly they're just putting up a false front to try and save face with the children. The parents are split. But what's really important to note here is what Itoi says: if I went and told them the reason for the father's absence, kids would end up getting the full picture. Yet most kids are being deceived by their mother and father. Your mother is keeping up a certain system and ideology. So this is how Itoi tells his stories. That's why so much of the important details are hidden in between the lines that you have to find and read into yourself. He's not going to expressly come out and say it in an interview. He's not going to put it directly in the game. The way he tells his stories is through a long, intricate, interweaved series of breadcrumb trails that you have to be following and picking up the pieces and putting all together in order to figure out what's really going on. He's trying to deceive you. He's trying to protect people's innocence by keeping, the sort of harder truths hidden behind all these breadcrumb trails, all these little hints he's dropping everywhere. So this is the way he tells his stories. That's why. So you're going to find that there's some huge, absolutely massive plot details that, without you knowing this is how he tells his stories, you would never be able to pick up on. So this is super fucking important to keep in mind throughout this, as you watch through this whole series, as I analyze